Top of the morning, we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Official test start time 2 minutes, 5 pages, 5 paragraphs each, 5 words each sentence, 5 sentences per paragraph, 5 computer spaces in between, 5 revisions. You can use your hyperscientific, you can use any artificial intelligence or technology, but you must show the work and share it with the class. If you do not show the work and share it with the class, I'm going to assume all you did was use technology and you will get zero credit for it. Um, let's see, let's get started. Give me one quick second. Go YouTube, go Bloomberg, go to the channel, go to videos, please. Um, Current events. These are Bloomberg business, so you cannot skip through these guys. Part of the marketing campaign for students.
There's so much data. We build models all night.
Nope. I'm using SAS5 to build models and make decisions.
There was broad support in the committee for holding
Positive quote of the day. Let's go.
broad, I would say, including among non-voters. So that's where that was. Of course, some people didn't want to cut it and dissented, but the committee pretty broadly for holding today.
Jay Powell there speaking after the Fed held rates steady and signaled a cautious outlook. You're watching the China show this morning. I'm Annabelle Rulers with David Inglass.
Good morning. We are counting down to the open of markets in Greater China. Let's get to your top stories today. A massive day for tech earnings. You have Samsung and SK Hynix each reporting record results as this AI wave shows no signs of breaking.
Yeah, that's the Korea story, but you've got the US as well. Tesla, Meta, IBM gaining on strong numbers, AI plans, but investors fearing, you can see that Microsoft's AI investments might be slow to pay off.
Commodities are surging with gold extending this record run. Brent crude also rising to 6-month highs. The dollar rebounding as the U.S. Treasury Secretary backing a strong currency.
And the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrives in Beijing, pledging to seek a more mature relationship ahead of today's meeting with President Xi Jinping.
Good Thursday morning. Welcome to the program. As is customary, we need to talk about the Fed. It's, of course, a couple of hours post this largely non-event. You had two dissenters, of course, who voted in favor of a rate cut, and it doesn't seem, based on the guidance bill coming out of the Fed, that there will be room to cut interest rates before Jay Powell's term ends, but I guess that is largely expected.
Yeah, for me, I think the dissenters are the most interesting part. And okay, Stephen Myron, maybe you could have expected, but Governor Chris Waller, I think, is an interesting move because it's sort of like, is he auditioning for the Fed chair? Is that what kind of keeps him in the race? Or is he really just reflecting concerns around the overall health of the labour market? We don't know that, of course.
Yeah, well, we need to get into his head as far as that is concerned. But I think when you look at the data, it's certainly proved a little bit more resilient of late compared to the last couple of meetings. So you could make a stronger case right now for a hold, not just today, right, but moving forward. Which then I guess we can set that aside because certainly when you look at the price moves in the markets overnight, the context was this time yesterday we were dealing with an absolute collapse in the U.S. dollar. A complete opposite right now, coming through out of comments out of the Treasury Secretary talking about how it is a strong dollar policy. There are no way intervening in the Japanese yen, which is, I think, the other big story we're tracking today, apart from tech, which obviously is, we have to talk about that too.
I mean, tech is very much front and center, really. These are big earnings. We've just kicked off the earnings season again, and you came into the session today, so you had Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, IBM. They were the big numbers in the US. You already had SK Hynix yesterday afternoon, but you had Samsung as well this morning, and it's that bigger story around, yes, you're seeing the memory chip crunch that's certainly starting to have an effect, but also different views on capex spend, essentially, because both Meta and Microsoft are scaling up their spending plans for this year, but only one of those is being punished for it.
Yeah, and we'll see what that perhaps portends, because you have Alphabet coming through next week as well, and Amazon, of course. And I think you put the capex together, I think it's $500 billion between the biggest spenders, right? As far as capex is concerned, as far as the estimates go, right? So we're going to get into all of that right now as we look at markets. And I think to the point Bell was just making there on Samsung and SK Hynix, perhaps prices are folding despite the fivefold increase, at least as far as Samsung is concerned, as far as the chip business goes. More on that in a moment. We also did get, by the way, a rate decision coming through, monetary policy decision, to be more specific, out of Singapore. Speaking of Southeast Asia, flip the page, please look at tech while we flip the page. The Indonesian story is one we'll get into really as well, following just one of the worst days for that market on record, really, as far as many superlatives are concerned, around concerns about investability. Here's the tech play as far as the Samsung story is concerned. Nasdaq futures are flat. Big bounce in the dollar, big dip, as you can see, big dip into the dollar yen. That's reversing somewhat as we speak here. Of course, they fold ahead in China. But of course, we're looking at commodity prices. We're arguably this is still really the story to track. I think people are sleeping on this recent pickup in oil prices, right? So 17%, I believe, from the bottom on Brent, 13% year to date, highest since late July. Iran's featuring into the conversations today.
It's about
gold spot 5,500, silver's 120. Let's call it even there.
Every single
futures,
day,
MSCI China, big pump
that's
yesterday. We'll see what happens today. Of course, dollar China. And
that's how change
there we go. Yeah,
occurs.
1 to 2 rates and the difference between the two. We're largely looking at declines given, of course, perhaps the bounce yesterday.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
but let's get back to that
Heavenly
tech story because it
for
is
the
really
blessings
front
in
and
our
center
lives.
for us. As we said,
We
we had
thank you, Heavenly
Samsung,
Father, for
SK
the
Hynix
blessings
here in
in our
Asia.
lives.
There's
We
Meta,
really not
Microsoft
we
among
don't
the
have
headliners from the
because
US.
the
But
process
our
is
team is here to walk us through the results this morning. We've got our Asia equities reporter, Sammy Cha,
Alright.
with us in Hong Kong, and
Now,
also from San
let's
Francisco
go
is our
to
tech reporter,
Ryan
Riley Griffin.
Tracy
But Sammy, I
on
think
the
we can start with you.
marketplace
So,
for 21
yeah,
success
it's pretty
secrets,
unusual to see
and let's
SK
pick
Hynix and Samsung
one that
reporting
applies
at
to us
at
for
the same
today.
time. Their earnings call within an
Open
hour of
up
each other
your
this morning. But what have we
apps,
learned
open
so
up your
far? And what are really the
hyperscientific,
highlights
open
for
up
you?
your
Yeah, that's
portable
right. It really
simulators,
is somewhat of a face-off rather than a coincidence. It
open
really
up your
goes
learn
way
business
back when
management,
this really
open up
happened
your
in the past.
Dominican
But again,
newspapers.
the whole
We're going to
focus is
take the
that
Spanish
they've
test
both
first,
reported
so we'll get the
amazing
hardest part
earnings,
of the
and
test
SK
out of
Hynix,
the
just like
way.
you said, had
Open
the
up
best
your
quarterly results, and
Google
Samsung's chip
Please go
business
to
is roaring back.
technology,
But again,
and
today we're seeing the share
we're going to
moves
go
actually falling,
to
and that's
Phone Arena.
actually quite
Please
usual
log on
for
to
the Korean market.
phonearena.com for
Investors
more
are taking
information, and
profit,
thank you
but
for
again, traders
sponsoring
are saying
today's
this is the
masterclass.
best opportunity to buy the dip
This is
again
about the
because all
Galaxy
eyes are on these
S26.
memory chip prices,
Very
which
good.
Citigroup
Very
estimates
good.
about
Okay.
120% increase for DRAM and 90% for NAND this year. So
Let's
all
check the
this
markets.
record shortfall in these conventional memories is really
Palm
resulting
oil
in some of these
passes U.S.
upsides
natural
for
gas.
Samsung and SK
Okay.
Hynix. And
We'll
it's really
take note of
interesting that this customer base for these memory
All right.
chips have entirely shifted.
Gold
In the past, it was
is
the PCs or the
in the
smartphone
green.
makers who would actually delay the buys if the prices
2.40%,
were too expensive. But now it's the
5,505
hyperscalers that you just talked
cents
about
an ounce.
who have
Silver
lots of cash, and they're
in
just
the
putting
green,
down the cash so
green
that they
range.
can get some of those capacity for these memory
2.20%,
chips. And all of this actually comes down to high bandwidth memory, HBM, in
118.94.
which SK Hynix
That's
is
a record
the
automatically.
leader, and
Platinum
of course
in the green,
very strategic partner
3.22%,
to NVIDIA, but also Google saying that it will be the
2,762.96 per
exclusive
ounce.
supplier
Palladium
to Microsoft's
in the
Maya
green,
chip. So all
2.00%,
this
2,059.72.
Do we know anything
Copper
more about
PM
the guidance
also
on
in the
pricing
green. Royal
and supply?
Flush again, the green range is
So that
0.63%,
we will be hearing more on from the conference call,
13,088.35.
which we'll
Wow.
we'll
That is
hear more
another
about.
home
But
run,
of course,
ladies and gentlemen.
again,
Chocolate.
the
We
HBM
have
is
Valentine's Day
space
coming
side,
up.
is taking
For all
up
the
so
lovers
much of
in the
these,
world.
manufacturing
In the red
capacity
range
from
is
these two companies.
6.11%,
And what's interesting is normally these conventional memories,
$4,150
they
a
were
pallet
booked
of chocolate.
quarter based. So
One
you
pallet
book
of
quarter,
chocolate
this quarter,
is
and then if you fall short, then you're not
$4,150.
gonna sign.
Let's compare
But
that
now
to
they're moving
coffee.
towards
Coffee's
one-year
also in the
basis.
red. The red
This is why
Ranger,
the investors are betting on it. They're saying
5.01%,
that this is no longer a cyclical
$351
kind of
per
business.
pallet.
It's
So
entire
one pallet of
structural change that
chocolate
we're
is
seeing here
almost
in this
$4,500.
space. And so,
One
and
pallet of
also
coffee
because of these
is less than
HBMs that
$400.
require so much
Unbelievable.
of the
Orange
wafers,
juice.
so the
How
wafers
much
are
is the
finite,
pallet of orange
and
juice today?
because of that,
It's in the
they
green,
require,
which
I
is
think
not
it
good
was
for
about
us.
3
But it is in the green. The green range is
wafers that is required for
3.46%,
conventional memory. So now,
$227 a
DRAM
pallet
and
of
NAND
orange
prices
juice.
are soaring because of that.
yes,
Wow.
sort of that pivot toward HBM that's cannibalizing the production of conventional memory, that's taking a lot of supply out of the market and hurting a lot of those PC and smartphone makers. But Riley, let's bring you in now because
all right,
we
we're going to redo this module.
And
as you all know, we are Team
BlackRock,
and of course, Blackstone, but BlackRock is our
Meta is being
main
rewarded
team.
for
1
it.
second.
Microsoft, of course, going in the other direction. But why is that?
We've done this module.
Yeah, that is based on the strength of Meta's earnings today.
We have to go back to it. This is as of the 26th, 10/25.
Projections for the first quarter, which
BlackRock files for
easily. As for deploying
Bitcoin
cash,
premium
Meta estimated that
income
full-year
ETF.
capital expenditures will be between
BlackRock
115
Incorporated
and
has filed an
135
application
billion,
with the United
easily
States
beating the
Securities and
110
Exchange
average
Commission
analyst
(SEC)
estimate. I want to put that in
for a
perspective
new
for you, though,
iShares
because
Bitcoin
Meta hits the top
premium
end of that
income
range. It will
exchange
mean
traded
a
fund
jump of
ETF.
roughly
The document
87% from
submitted on
2025,
January
which was
23rd
already a record
and made
year in
public
which
on Monday
CapEx topped
shows
72 billion.
if approved, such an ETF fund would use a so-called covered call strategy, offering call options on the 70 billion plus shares or iShares Bitcoin Trust. Ticker symbol IBIT. To gross income. It would also allow investors to trade with Bitcoin in a less risky environment. Give me 1 quick second. I need to send a quick message to an old friend from a far and unknown region.
Okay, well, so that's quite a jump. Riley, where does the money go? What's going to be funded here?
Yeah, yet another year we're going to see cash deployed to data centers and the infrastructure that is bolstering this AI race. That needs chips, that needs talent. This is a year where we're going to see Meta continue to double down on what Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO, is calling an effort to front-load capacity. He's hoping to gobble up that capacity now in an effort to reach that goal of super intelligence, which is a theoretical milestone in which Meta
certain ways, certain time, and all that. Let's go back from the top. As of the 26th, BlackRock files for Bitcoin Premium Income ETF. BlackRock Incorporated has filed an application with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) for a new iShares Bitcoin Premium Income exchange traded fund. The document submitted on January 23rd and made public on Monday shows, if approved, such an ETF fund will use a so-called covered call strategy, offering call options on the 70 billion plus iShares Bitcoin Trust, ticker symbol
Tesla's another interesting one, streamlining vehicle portfolio. Well,
it would also allow investors to trade with Bitcoin in a less risky environment. Equity Premium Income ETFs incorporate stocks with options strategies in an effort to produce additional income amid more volatile market conditions. BlackRock would trade through iShares, the company's collection of ETF and index mutual funds. That is a major power move.
Also counting
For my
down to the open
students,
of trade
please
in
take
Shanghai,
notes.
Shenzhen, and Hong
All
Kong.
right,
You're
let's
watching
move
the
out of
China
here
show
real
futures
quick.
looking to some
And
slight
let's get up to
losses.
speed.
More ahead.
You ready? Let's go, baby. ByteDance. Alibaba may launch new AI tools soon. TikTok's parent, ByteDance Limited, and Alibaba Group
U.S.
Holdings
economy
Limited
expanded at a
are
solid
both
pace
planning
last
to
year
release
and is coming
their
into
new
2026
artificial
on
intelligence models
It was
for the
proposed
lunar
by
year
committee
in February
for approval.
in an effort to become dominant
We will
in
see
that field
the
in the
effects
Chinese
of
market.
tariffs
The information
flowing through
reported
goods
on
prices,
Thursday.
peaking and then starting to come down,
According to
assuming
two
there are no
people
new
familiar with the
major
matter,
tariff
ByteDance
increases.
is
I'm wondering
allegedly
what
seeking to
advice you
release
have
3 new
for
models.
whoever your successor
Those
might
would
be.
be
Stay
a
out
new
of
language model,
politics.
LM Dao LM Doubao 2.0, an image generation tool, Seed Dream or Seed Dream 5.0, and Seed Dance 2.0, which develops videos.
all the way through
Meanwhile,
to the end of Jay
Alibaba
Powell's
is
term.
preparing to
Joining us here
launch
instead to talk us
a
through
new
implications
version
on
of
treasuries, rate
its
cuts,
large language
anymore,
model,
the dollar, and
LLM,
all things fixed income. Joining us here instead,
Quen
Masahiko Liu, senior
3.5,
fixed income
and to
strategist at
perform
State
more
Street
complex
Investment
tasks.
Management. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Alibaba Group Holding Limited
Market
stands in the
sees
green.
maybe
The
2
Green
cuts this
Ranger,
year. How many do you guys see?
5.12%, $173.50 a share.
Okay.
Alibaba Group Holding Limited A shares also stand in the green. The Green Ranger, 1.70%, $175.26
next year into next year if Republicans
per
lose
share.
the midterm election, that might have some
Preview.
implication on the fiscal
Apple
spending restraint in
post
the US. So we have a bit of
solid
inflation
Q1
that
figures
first half,
amid
second half
iPhone sales
deciding.
recovery.
Economy-wise, you see a pretty good year in the first half.
Apple Incorporated,
0.5%
the
of
world's
GDP
third
being added to
most
fiscal
valuable
spending.
company,
Second half, you see
with
a
a
bit of
market cap
unemployment
of
tricking
around
up, and that's when we see there will be
$3.82
more cuts
trillion,
priced in the market.
is set
Would
to
that be a
release
good
its
representation
financial
of the path
results
of the
for the
dollar up
first quarter
slightly and then
of
down
its
into
fiscal
next year? Maybe we certainly
2026
see down in the
after
top of the
stock
last
markets
48
in the
hours.
United
We think
States
so, right?
closed
Like
on
the
Thursday.
market has priced
Wow,
for 2 cuts,
they
right,
are
of
early.
the path
Hmm.
of the Federal Reserve. That's why market is pricing in a gradual
Apple
downturn of the dollar.
Apple
But
has
we
done
think it's like,
the
you know,
first
that
power
will
move.
basically
Okay.
encourage investors
Analysts
to
expect
increase
the
their
iPhone
hedge
maker
ratio.
to post
That is what
revenue
we
of
call it, right? That's the
approximately
flow versus stock effect, right? The flow
137.4
effect
billion
is market pricing
in
whatever
the
near term.
reported period,
Stock effect is when
growing
you
about
go to a longer
11%
treasury
year
term,
over year.
fundamentals does
In
work,
addition,
does
earnings per
matter,
share
and then that's when
(EPS)
people
are
start,
projected to
you
come
know,
in
picking up a bit of
at
their hedge ratio. This is what we've
2.67,
seen
up from
lately, right? In
2.40
Aussie,
reported in the same
Korean won,
quarter
right?
last year.
MPS in Korea
In
announced
terms
that
of
they will
sales,
hike
demand
their
for the
hedge ratio
iPhone,
that helps
the
Korean
tech
won
giant's
in
main
the
revenue
midterm.
driver,
And
is
Australia, you have
expected
seen the
to have
supers coming out,
recovered due to the high
alluding
demand
that they will hike
for
their,
the
you know,
iPhone
pick up their
17
hedge
line,
ratio too, right? So this is
particularly
what's
in the
going to
United
happen in the
States
next,
and
you know,
China.
to the longer term.
What do you think then
According
when
to
you
the
hear
latest
the
data
Treasury
from
Secretary
Hong Kong
confess and
based
touting a strong dollar
counterpoint
policy and
research,
then giving a different rationale
Apple led
for why it
the
actually might go a
smartphone
bit higher
market
from here?
with a
I
20%
think,
share
you know,
in
she's
2025,
basically doing a bit of
and its
damage
shipments
control,
grew
right? What
10%
we have done
on an annual
regarding last
basis.
Friday night, especially, you know,
iPhone
Friday night
revenue
for my time,
is projected
or,
to
you know,
hit
Friday morning in the
78
US,
billion
which is like
in the first quarter
there was a rate
of
check from
fiscal
the New York Federal
2026,
Reserve, right, on
up
JPY
13% compared to
after
the same
what
period a
MOF
year
have done
ago.
during, you know, my afternoon,
In
right? I
addition,
think, you know,
Apple
they're trying to
Services is
control the
expected to
narrative
be
of market
another
overselling
major
yen
profit
too, right?
booster for
And
the company,
if yen has
with
excessive
revenue
of this
reaching
order
about
sell-off, that
30
would
billion,
affect JGB.
up
And then if
approximately
the long end JGB keeps
14%
on
from
selling
the
off,
first quarter
that's
of
not a good news for the US,
2025.
right? So I
Apple
guess, you know,
Incorporated
Japan has
stands in the
basically
red,
talked
the
about
Red Ranger,
with Bassett, right?
0.71% to
Minister of
56.44.
Finance has come to the conclusion agreement that okay,
Pentagon,
we'll try to do
Lockheed
something to
Inc.
cool
deal
down the
to
market,
quadruple
not let the
missile
market, you know,
output.
just cool down the speculators,
The
right?
United
The
States
speculative
Department
flow,
of Defense
get it away,
signed the
get it
framework
out, and then, you
agreement
know, let
with
fundamentals work
Lockheed
itself
Martin
into
to
big
increase
2026
annual
2027.
production of terminal
It's
high
possible info for
altitude
credit card
area
without getting
defense
approved for a credit card.
TH-880
Realize your credit score
interceptors
is only part
from
of the equation.
96
Credit
to
card with
400
Google Odds
units.
technology goes way beyond.
The expansion announced on Thursday comes alongside the launch of a new munitions acceleration center in Camden, Arkansas, part of a broader push to boost domestic missile manufacturing. Lockheed Martin CEO Jim Tykler said the agreement will ensure the United States and its allies have more interceptors than ever before to deter our adversaries. This is the second such agreement this month between Lockheed and the Pentagon. So Lockheed has to be first in Apple, but it's okay. They strike us back. Following a similar deal to ramp up production of PAC-3 MSE interceptors. A formal contract under this framework is expected to be included in the 2026 defense appropriations.
You know, the line is at is 162, right?
SAP shares slide by 12% on lukewarm cloud data. SAP SE shares declined by 12% on Thursday
ballpark.
After the
And I
company
think,
published its
at the end,
earnings
moved to
report
159, 160.
for the
That's
full
when,
year
MOF came in
2025,
and did the
in
rate
which it
check.
revealed
And
the
US
missed
came in because,
expectations on total
MOF
cloud
basically knew
backlog.
that, if they were to do it
Previously,
by
in
themselves,
October,
it's
SAP
going to be powerless,
revised
right?
its
But then when you
outlook
have
for cloud
US together
revenue
with
in
you,
2025
look what happens to market, right?
downwards,
Markets are,
and
powering back
eventually
all this,
delivered a
short
number
position,
on the
short
lower
covering,
end of the
right?
projection,
And that's
a
when you
total
see
of
went to 152, but then
21.66
now
billion
probably up
euros.
to 154 now,
In the
right?
full
So
year
a bit of,
2025,
taking
SAP
greater
reported a
market,
total cloud
and the
backlog
short
of
covering is probably down for
77.29
now.
billion,
Okay.
What
which
happens with
represented a rise of
the election approaching
22%
and
year on year,
do we see any sort of
30% at
fluctuations, I
constant
guess, around that or any
currency.
higher level
Its revenue
uncertainty?
increased
Sure,
by
I think
8% to
the
36.6,
hype overnight is
I'm
like,
sorry,
I think the
correction,
sentiment on the ground in
36.8
Japan is
billion euros,
Takaichi and
11%
LDD
at
might
constant
actually win
currency.
majority, single
Its
majority by
basic
the
earnings
vote
per
party.
share,
So I think that
EPS,
will enforce the view
calculated
that
by the
there's more fiscal
International
spending coming
Financial
in the
Reporting
responsible
Standards,
way, of course, right? So the
IFRS,
skill the key
grew
that
by
Takaichi is trying to convey to
135%
the market, and
to
that might have a bit of volatility to
6.28
the February 8th
euros.
flagship
SAP
in Japan.
shares declined
But the
by
whole point is, right, I think
11.9%
there's a
at
communication gap
9:07 a.m.
between
Central Eastern
Takaichi
Time
administration
to
and the market. Look at Scott Bessent, right? He's the
172.8
best
per share
salesperson of US Treasury.
after
And
slumping
when it came
by
out, US Treasury
12%
calmed down, people stopped the
moments
South America
earlier.
narrative. But
SAP
Japan, I think we need someone like,
SE
the Scott Bessent that can
O.N
actually communicate
stands
with
in
the
red,
client
the
and
red
close
range
that
of
gap, right? Because Japan doesn't have
16.29%,
funding problem. Recall, 90% of Japanese debt is
$169.18 a
funded
share.
domestically.
SAP
Period.
SE
So
ADS
it's
stands in the
there's
green,
always fire, right?
the green
The only
range of
thing better is
0.93%,
and yield level pricing.
236.11
On the yield, I was going to ask you about
per
credit.
share.
On the yield level
Samsung
on JGBs,
Q4 operating profit
for the
soars
longest time,
over
the
200%
debt burden was
to
not an issue because it was
$13.9
locally
billion.
owned. But at these levels, do you think it
Samsung
becomes a
Electronics
problem in
reported
terms
on
of just
Thursday
being able to
that
service
its
it? And I
operating
just want to ask
profit
you too,
for
like,
the
is there
fourth
any
quarter
value
of
right now versus
2025
JGB
surged
curve? You
to a
would be
record
advocating investors to
20.07
dip.
trillion won,
Sure. I think to answer your
13.9
first
billion,
question regarding
a
the
209%
servicing
increase
costs,
from a
right?
year
You
earlier.
have to look at liability
The
versus
company's chip
assets, right?
division
Recall
drove
Japan is
most
one
of
of
the
the
growth,
biggest
posting
creditor in the world,
16.4
right? Net
trillion won
external
in
assets is
operating profit,
3.7
up
trillion dollars,
from
3.5
2.9 trillion won
fluctuates
in the
based on
same
FX.
period
But the
of
whole point is
2024.
you're getting a lot of high coupon,
Revenue
right, more than
climbed
3.7 trillion dollars,
23.8%
which
to
is actually offsetting the
93.83
servicing
trillion
cost
won,
Japan is paying.
while net
Right, so I
profit
think
soared
like squaring everything out, net for
153.3%
now,
to
no effect. Okay. And the
19.64
second question
trillion
regarding the
won.
yield level attractiveness,
For the
I
full
think it's very
fiscal
attractive from
2025,
current level, right? Look
Samsung's
at
sales
10-year
totaled
JGB is trading
333.6
1.2.5,
trillion won,
and we start seeing
up
real money, banks,
10.9%
insurance companies coming
year-on-year.
out saying that they will buy for
Operating profit rose
yield is
33.2% to
That is real, right? People
43.6
coming out.
trillion won,
Recall Japan, the
while
banking
net
system has
income
400
jumped
trillion dollars of liquidity, have cash.
45.2% to
Right? It's a matter of time they
45.2
come buy
trillion
one,
won.
not buying now, because they're waiting for BOJ to hike the
As of
total.
the 28th,
And then
Tesla's
no one wants to catch
Q4
falling
revenues
knives in
fall
Japan,
3%
especially,
to
the SR
24.90
mindset.
billion.
But when you get volatility subsides,
Tesla
that's when they come
Incorporated
in, and
revealed
that will
on
be a
Wednesday that
2026,
its revenue in
late
the fourth
2026
quarter
story.
of its fiscal
Gold, though,
2025
has still been
amounted to
reflecting that shift away from
24.9
some
billion,
bonds and currencies, concerns about Fed independence as well. So
falling
now we're
3%
at
year
5,500 an ounce. It's
and
pretty
missing
crazy.
analyst
What do you make of it?
forecasts.
And would you actually find
Also,
it attractive at all as an
diluted
asset right now
earnings per
at
share
these sort of
tumbled
levels?
60%
I'll give you a very good
compared
example.
to the same
So
time
I've been
frame
traveling
in
in APAC,
2024
speaking
to
with clients. I
stand
was in
at
Taipei yesterday.
0.24
Right. There's
in the reported
never been
trimester.
so much discussion regarding gold from every single
Net
investor.
income
Real money,
attributable to
long
common
only,
shareholders declined
the big
by
asset owners.
61%
I
on an
think
annual
there's a
basis to
rebasement,
840
rebasing of
million.
prices, right, going up to
For the full year
5,500.
2025,
The
total
whole point
revenues
of gold
dropped
is there's
3%
finite
to
supply, right?
94.8
Limited
billion.
supply. When you have
EPS
demand
declined
coming in, especially from
47%
central banks,
to
Venezuela's supposed to pull off ETF flow coming in.
1.08
So it
and
adds
net
state straight
income
investment management. We
retreated
run the biggest
46%
gold ETF in the world.
to 3.8 billion.
We have been seeing
In
flows coming in
2026, we will
from
further invest
across the
in the
spectrum, right?
infrastructure
Different
needed to
investors.
support
So we think
clean
that
energy
whenever
and
gold
transport
dip, right,
and
it's,
autonomous
the
robots,
mentality now is to
including
buy
the
on
grant
dips
of
instead of
6
sell,
new
take
production
profit when it
lines
goes higher.
across vehicle
Okay?
robots energy
Masahiko,
storage,
great to see
and
you again. At the start of the year, that was
manufacturing,
Masahiko Lu,
while
the senior
further
fixed income
leveraging
strategist at State Street
our
Investment
existing
Management, counting
factory,
down, of course, the open of trade in
charging
Shanghai,
and
Shenzhen, and
service
Hong Kong.
center
Futures
footprint
pointing
to
to
support
a little
future
bit of
growth,
weakness here.
the
Also
car
taking a look at
maker
the V1
said.
reference rate at the bottom of the
Tesla
screen. We'll have more
stacking
ahead. This is Bloomberg.
2.48% in the after-hours trading following the release of a report to sell at 441.125 apiece. Tesla Incorporated stands in the green, 0.13%, 431.46.
You're watching the China show this
Meta's
morning, taking a look at what we're going to be keeping an eye on today in the sessions. We've got Keir Starmer, of course, the UK Prime Minister in China to meet with President Xi Jinping later today. Also, lots of focus on the metal space in particular, because you've got Goldman Sachs saying the base metals rally is at risk on weak Chinese demand, but of course, precious metals is quite a different story. And we've actually got the first ETF that's going to give exposure to mining companies listing in just a few minutes from now.
Yeah, we have a couple of things to
Full-year
track, of course, and as you look at that, I mean, it's
reaching
like we are not yet
$200.9
spoke for
billion,
choice on
while the EPS lost 2%
proxies to get exposed to the gold
2025,
play. So one, of course, is today, the other one is tomorrow. Amidst the market that is pulling back a little bit following, like I mentioned, quite a very, very good day in equity markets on Wednesday. So the opening bell
is to
plus
be
this debut
in the
today
range of
coming up. This is the China
53.5
show.
billion to 56.5 billion, while the full year 2026 total expenses are expected to amount to between 162 billion and 169 billion. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg praised the company's performance in 2025. I'm looking forward to advancing personal superintelligence for people around the world in 2026, he said. Meta platform stands in the red 0.63%, $668.73.
I can call myself a champion, then host
And
Hungarian
if I'm not mistaken,
Targaryens.
yep, we're going to close with this. Microsoft's Q2 revenue tops estimates at 81.3 billion, up 17% year on year. Microsoft's corporation announced on Wednesday that its revenue in the second quarter of the company's fiscal year 2026 jumped 17% year over year to hit a record 81.3 billion, landing above analyst expectations. Operating income increased by 21% year on year.
All right, welcome back. You're watching the China
While
show.
net
We're looking at the Hang Seng
income
Index 7 to 1%. A
over
couple
the
of
same
other
period
things. Well,
to
just to mention what you're
38.5
seeing on your
billion,
screens, of course, is
driven by
a gold
7.6
ETF
billion net
here in the
gain
city.
from
Why
investments
not?
in
With spot at
OpenAI.
5,500,
Diluted
right?
earnings
We
per
have a
share,
one more tomorrow,
EPS, also
which is a
at
different iteration, a different
60%
type.
annually to
Part of
reach
that, gold is up. I think silver spot
5.16.
is closing in the
Meanwhile,
120.
Microsoft
You get
cloud
this massive
revenue marked
bounce in the dollar following comments
51.5
coming out of this
billion,
conference. We haven't talked about the Fed,
advancing
but there was really
26%
nothing as far as the Fed
compared
was
to the
concerned.
same
So I guess we
quarter
can
the year
set that
before,
aside for now.
while the
Tech
Jordan
is a big
and
thing
other
too, though, although it's
revenue
largely a
increased
non-China story. These are
39%.
specific.
We are only
Yeah, I
at
mean,
the
the memory
beginning
chip price
phases
theme, I think,
of
is
AI
consistent,
diffusion,
something that will have a
and
bearing on
already
some of the Chinese
Microsoft
electronics
built
makers, for
an AI
instance. And you've also
business
got
that
prominent
is
Chinese memory chip
a
makers that will be
larger
looking to
or
list in
is
Hong Kong
larger
later this year.
than
But
some of our
in
biggest
terms of the market
franchises.
activity today, yeah, it's sort of,
Microsoft
you're just
CEO
seeing it moving a little bit higher at the
Satya
open. It has
Nadella
been,
stated
we did see
in the
some
release,
southbound selling yesterday
underscoring
for a fourth straight
how the
session,
tech
but
giant is
overall
pushing the
Chinese
frontier
equities have been
across
moving
its
higher
entire
across
AI
the board,
stack
and you're just seeing again
following
lots
the
of green
release
here
of the
across the
results.
screen this morning. Big
Microsoft
focus on what's
stock
happening in the
traded
metal space. Actually, Goldman Sachs is
4.40%
out with an
lower
interesting note,
in
and
the
they're saying that the
after-hours
base
trading
metals rally
sessions
is at
to
risk
sell
on weak
for
Chinese demand. So
$460.29
you could be looking at
at
headwinds from some of the
4:22 p.m.
manufacturers in that
Eastern
space.
Time.
But take,
Bumper call from gold.
well, it is. I mean, gold. You can always look at gold, for instance, hitting 5,500 an
I
ounce this
badge
morning.
your cars are friends.
Yes.
Go.
All right, let's take a look at what's happening in Hong Kong today,
Lockheed Martin's
because
Q4
again, the
sales
focus
up
of those
by
ETFs
9%
is that
to
gold ETF
20.3
making its
billion.
debut, of course,
The
but
Lockheed
starting
Martin
to trade. But
Corporation announced on
broadly, we
Thursday
are looking a bit to
that
the
its net
downside. Actually,
sales in the
tech
fourth
space
quarter
is
of the fiscal
interesting
year
to watch today because you're
2025
already off more
saw
than
an
1%.
annual
And
rise of
it would just be
9%
interesting to see
to
any sort
reach
of read across. We said,
20.2
yeah,
billion.
memory chip prices is something that's
Its
going to
net
be having a big
earnings
bearing this year
skyrocketed by
because you've got SK Hynix,
155%
Samsung, the big
compared to the
beneficiaries
same
out of that.
period
But
of the
certainly,
previous
the
year
more they
to
ramp
hit
up their HBM
1.34
production,
billion.
the more it has an
Meanwhile,
impact on the
its
wider
diluted
DRAM
earnings per
market.
share
NAND
surged
prices as well.
by
There's lots of flexibility for those suppliers in terms of how they set their prices to their customers. But we are just seeing that down across the board today, Tesla supply is also in focus. I think this is a very interesting earnings report for Tesla because they're actually pulling back on how many EVs they're planning to manufacture in terms of their different types of EVs, but also they're continuing to make that shift into AI, into robotics in particular. So they're asking investors to be pretty patient with that. We are just taking a look at some of their supplies. They're pretty mixed moves so far. Another company to track as well, because they've got Moon Yuan Foods here. This is one of the world's biggest pig breeders and pork producers. And watching their listing there, but they're seeking up to $1.4 billion in that. So it's going to be their second listing in Hong Kong. Could raise as much as 10.7 billion Hong Kong dollars. And then also, David, still tracking what's happening in the metal space. We said
yeah, I still recall it was a few days before Christmas, and we were seeing falls of silver at 70, and folks were saying, you know what, that looks a bit expensive. Silver was topping at 70. Well, guess what? We're 120 now, and we're barely about a month from that call. As we were pointing out, right, so spot gold hitting a fresh record today. Don't sleep on this pickup we're seeing in the commodity space with Shanghai crude, of course, following that move that we had on Brent, which had 69, effectively put Brent crude at the highest since late 41%. But yeah, let's circle back to gold, because why not? Everyone is scrambling for anything that resembles gold.
Mostly BlackRock.
These days,
But shout out to Blackstone. Blackstone's Q4 revenue up 41% to $4.3 billion.
Very big topic
Blackstone Incorporated announced on Thursday that its total revenue for the fourth quarter of the fiscal year 2025 grew by 41% on a yearly basis to $4.3 billion.
And then the other 50% is obviously they can't tell us where the gold falls.
to $1.9 billion.
Suffice to say,
While diluted earnings per share EPS rose to 1.30 compared
just
to
on that story, right? They're also
0.92
looking at
in the fourth
bolstering
quarter
the
of
trading
2024.
platforms on the exchange.
Total assets under management,
Equities has been a very big part, IPOs and everything else.
increased to
Gold futures, and today
up
we just showed you, of course, that
13% year over
that
year,
live pictures
with
coming out of the exchange. Hang Seng Gold
71.5 billion.
ETF here in Hong Kong today.
With
This is the latest offering,
71.5 billion
in fact, for
of
investors that want to get
inflows
exposure to the bling bling.
for the
Now,
full
joining us here instead, Rebecca
2025.
Sin, our
So the
ETF
revenue
analyst,
went
to
up
talk us
by
through
9% on
this
an
one
annual basis
specifically
to
today.
$14.4 billion.
What are we getting into today?
As diluted
And how much is
EPS
it going to cost
advanced
investors?
6%
So this
to
is the fifth gold
3.87.
ETF that's listed on Hong Kong
We
Exchange. After
delivered
tomorrow, there
again
will be
for
6.
our
But Hang Seng
limited
has
partners,
listed a physical
leading to
gold ETF
71
at only
billion
40
of
basis
inflows
points.
in the
So
quarter.
this is the
The
cheapest gold
highest
ETF
in
that's
over
available.
4
But what's
years.
unique
Our
about this
focus
ETF is
on
that you
investing
can redeem it
at
back
massive
in
scale
physical gold. So
in the
you buy the
build-out
ETF
of
and then you go to
digital
Hang Seng
and
Bank
energy
and get physical
infrastructure
gold back. And so
continues
this is
to
the only
create
ETF that offers
significant
this
value
unique feature.
for our
And
investors.
because it's done by Hang Seng
Chairman and
Investments, you can redeem
CEO
the
Stephen
ETF
A.
at the bank and get physical
Schwartzman
gold back.
noted
And so this is very, very interesting
Blackstone
because we've
shares
never had an
increased
ETF like
by
this. It's only 40 basis points, 100% backed by physical
going
gold.
for
And as you know, gold is up
148.49
28% in just the past 2 weeks.
following the release
Exactly.
of the
So
report.
Crazy. That's
Blackstone
statistics so low.
Incorporated stands
it really
in the red,
does.
the red
It
range
really
of
does. Because even when we were talking
1.09%,
about 5,000 and 5,000, you just blows right past that to 5,500.
per share.
What are the flows
Silver
then showing
rises
us around
by
gold
over
in general?
3%
So
to
gold
new
is at a
all-time high
record level.
of
And normally when you see an
120.
asset class hit record level,
The
you
price
expect
of silver
outflows, people to
surged
profit take.
to an
But we've actually
all-time
seen
high
the
on
opposite, which is
Thursday,
very surprising. So year
surpassing
to date, we've seen roughly
$120
$16
per
billion
ounce.
in assets going into gold
Investors once
ETFs
again
globally.
turn
And so
to
this is a
precious
record
metals
number. And what's
as
interesting
a
of
haven
this is if we look
after
at the
the
top
United
10
States
ETF
Federal
inflows for
Reserve
gold,
decided
5 of them are
to
listed
hold
in mainland China.
its
So this
interest
just shows you
rates
how much
steady.
how much demand there is coming from
Moreover,
the
Chair
region.
Jerome
And
Powell
historically, as
indicated
Federal Reserve
that
increase
the
rates, you
institution
often see gold
is
prices go up.
unlikely
And
to
so
cut
this year,
rates
no
at
surprise there
its
that we're
next
seeing an
meeting.
increase. But as
Horrible.
central banks have been increasing their gold reserves since
Self-explanatory,
2022,
right? Horrible.
the top holders of gold
Silver
after the
jumped
US
by
and Germany is really Asia Pacific. So you
3.07%
have mainland
to
China, Japan, and
$120
India
per
as the
ounce
top holders of
at
physical gold.
1:39
And so from a
a.m.
flow
Eastern
perspective, we're
Time.
hitting record
numbers,
just
people are
moments after
increasing.
hitting
And so this
the
ETF is very
record
timely
high
in that it's at where gold prices are
120.46.
trading and the flows are at both at
Meanwhile,
record level.
gold
And one
also
thing that's
reached
unique is I think
a new
Goldman Sachs mentioned
all-time
this week that
high
they expect
of
gold to hit around 5,500 to
5,596.28
6,000. Bloomberg Intelligence expect gold to stay around the 5,000,
per
so
ounce.
above 5,000 this year.
It
So it's very
traded
timely for this ETF. And it
3.87%
should do
higher
quite well in the region because one,
at
Asians love gold. Gold is oftentimes an asset class. And the mainland
584.29
China
per
is the
ounce
third
at
largest holder
1:42
of
a.m.
physical
Eastern
gold.
Time.
Okay.
Platinum
Rebecca,
soared by
thank you so much. Rebecca's in there,
1.60%
of course, who looks
at
at this space very,
1:43
very
a.m.
closely on
Eastern
ETF
Time
levels. What a
to
time to be alive. When you look at the gold
2,718.01
ETF. Okay,
per ounce.
we're looking at the benchmark
At the
right now.
same
We're
time,
about
palladium rose by
7 minutes, going on 7
1.29%
minutes. The cash
to
market session here. CSI 300,
2,045.24 per
MSCI China
ounce.
Hang Index coming up on your screens. When you look at these numbers,
Palladium
just keep in
stands
mind, I'm going to
in
mark out some other
the
numbers
green,
too.
2.50%,
30,000
platinum in
HSI,
the green, 3.49%,
5,300
gold
of the
in
CSI
the green,
300,
2.43%, silver
and
in the green,
99 on MSCI
2.33%,
China.
and
Those are the
we're not
targets
even
coming
including
through
copper 3M,
out
which
of
we know
Citi
is
on the
already
benchmarks
at
for
home run
2026.
status.
Joining us
So
here on set to
thank
talk
you,
us through
Heavenly
those
Father.
calls and how you
Gold up 4%
express.
after hitting new all-time
As a
high
small
of
business owner, you need a tax service that lets you
5,596.
focus on your business while maximizing
Give me one
savings
second.
and providing.
YouTube knows I'm teaching the
Those
class, and I
trades.
will
Joining
do
us
that.
here is Pierre Lau, China Equity
Alright.
Strategist at Citi Research. Very nice to
Open
see
your
you.
apps.
Nice
Okay.
meeting you.
So
Gold up 4%
bullish looking at the
after
targets
hitting
themselves.
new all-time
How
high
do we?
of
How are you looking at market leaders
5,596.
this year? What are the places
Prices
to be?
of the most
Well, this year,
valuable precious
2026,
metals
is a special
continue their
year.
rally
It
on
will be
Thursday,
the first year
breaking
above
records in
55 year
Europe
period. So the first thing
5,600
that
mark.
we should look at is the
The yellow
55-year
metals
plan.
rise
And
follows
from
the
that
decline
perspective,
of the
we are more
United States
positive
dollar,
into some
which
sector
has
like
lost
tech. And then
13.1% against
secondly,
the euro
export
over the
is still
last
something
12
that we
months.
are very interested in. China is a
For my
big
students,
country.
what is that?
It's not easy to be replaced by other countries because
13.001%
China has a
per month
lot of industry, very
on
comprehensive value chain.
reaching levels
And
not
also,
seen
we
in
have
almost
high degree of
4.5 years.
automations. We're using more
Gold jumped
robotic, so that also boosts
4.01%
China
to
export. And then, thirdly, is basic
5,592.10
material. You mentioned
ounce
about gold moments
at
ago. Yeah, so
1:22
basic material
a.m.
is also an
Eastern Time
area that we are seeing
after reaching
continuous
a
earning
new
upward revisions.
all-time
So
high
these three
of
aspects, I think we can be more positive in
5,596.28
2026.
earlier in the session.
And drilling down in tech in particular, which areas of the market
Deutsche
stand out
Bank's
to you?
Q4
Well,
revenue
tech, there
up
are several different
7%
sectors.
to
You can
7.7 billion.
divide them into a
Deutsche
semiconductor,
Bank AG announced on Thursday that its revenue
telecommunications,
for the
software,
fourth
hardware,
quarter
like that.
of fiscal
The area that we are
2025
more interested in are
rose by
semiconductor. The
7%
reason is that we are
year-over-year
expecting
to
China,
7.7
the Chinese
billion.
government want to have more
Net profit
localization
in the
to support
reported
our
trimester
semiconductor development.
stood at
Obviously, over the last 5
1.57
years,
billion,
China have a lot of obstacles
jumping
in
from
terms of bringing or importing
337 million
high
euros
level
registered
semiconductor
in
into
the same
China,
period
and
the
that's
year
why the
prior.
Chinese government want to have more
Full-year
self-development,
revenues were up
research and
7%,
R&D, so that we
landing
can
at
have more local
32.1
supply
billion,
to ease the
while
bottleneck.
net profit
That's also the
skyrocketed
area that you can
104%
expect more policy support.
compared
And
to
for stock
the year
market,
before,
obviously, we
reaching
want to have more government support
7.1
in terms of the
billion
area that
euros.
we are interested in.
The
And
bank said
semiconductor is the
that
things
it
that
will
we like.
propose
Okay.
a
On the
2025
benchmark
dividend
basis, I'm curious, what is
of
the
€1
earnings
per
forecast
share
from
to
Citi as far as
shareholders
growth, and the
at
bulk
its
of
annual
that will be
general
coming from
meeting
what
in
sector
May.
specifically?
We
Earning this year
delivered
will be
on
exciting.
all of our
We forecast that the
2025
EPS growth
financial
for Hang
goals.
Seng this year will
That
be
is amazing.
accelerated
Shout out to
to
them.
9.1%,
And with
much better than
8.5
2.2%
billion
last
euros
year.
in
And the
delivered
biggest earning
and
upward
proposed
revisions come
capital
from two aspects.
distribution so
One is
far
from the internet
since
sector.
2022.
Internet sector, you might recall
So
that last
2
year
billion
there were
a
a lot of
We
competitions,
will
in particular
surpass our
related to
original
food delivery
commitment to
business.
shareholders.
So
That
some
is
companies they
amazing
have earning
business
cut
right
last
there.
year,
Shout out to
but
them.
this year we
This gives
expect
us
that
the
they will
strongest
resume
possible
having earning
foundation
growth.
for the next phase of
Obviously,
our
they will have
strategy,
lower
CEO
earning base
Christian
from
Selwyn
poor
said.
performance last year. And
Deutsche
the
Bank
other
AG
area that we are
and
seeing
AO.N
continual upward earning
stands in
revision
the
is the
green. The
basic
green
material,
range is
where it's related to
0.81%
copper,
to
aluminum,
3.13.
gold, silver, etc. Interesting on that because Goldman has been discussing this call out from Goldman Sachs,
Starmer
but they're
meets
actually
with
saying
China's
that
Xi
the rally
in
we've had in base
Beijing.
metals could face
British Prime Minister
headwinds
J.R.
essentially, but
Starmer
softer
met
demand
with
may
Chinese
come across from
President
China. So
Xi
you don't
Jinping
see
in
that being the
Beijing
case.
on
Well,
Thursday
I think
after
for
becoming the first United Kingdom
demand from
Prime
China
Minister to visit
thing.
The
we
country
are talking
since
about
2018.
some specific area.
Just ahead
For
of this
example,
meeting
we are
with
not
Xi,
talking about all kind
Starmer
of
was
basic
welcomed
material
by
to
National
have increasing
People's
prices.
Congress
For
Chairman
instance, if you talk
Zhao
about steel,
Lehi at
cement,
Beijing's
property market
Great
in
Hall
China are
of
not very
People.
good, so they
We
are
have
not
made
moving
this
at
trip
the moment.
because I
But
believe
other
it is
area we talk about
strongly in
copper,
our common
aluminum.
interest to
These are
find
the
positive
areas that you
ways
can see a
to
lot
work
of demand,
together.
in particular for
And that has
pathway
been our
development,
long-standing
infrastructure
position.
development. We
Starmer
are
told the
having the
chairman,
accelerated electricity
adding
demand
that he looks forward
globally.
to a
So
very
that's why
productive
I
few
think for
days.
some
In his opening remarks to Xi,
type of
the
metal like
Prime Minister
copper,
said
aluminum,
he's
the
seeking a
demand
more
will remain strong.
sophisticated relationship
There was a research note
between the
from
United
internally
Kingdom and
earlier. I was
China,
reading it.
according to
This,
Sky News.
as an example, this rise in silver prices might
And
hit
we'll finish
silver,
with
for example,
Samsung.
that
As of
uses
the
some
28th,
metal. And I'm curious,
Samsung's
someone
Q4
else's
operating
earnings
profit
become someone
soared
else's margin
200%
compression,
to
right? So this pickup in
13.9
commodity
billion.
prices, are
Samsung
there specific
Electronics
sectors where
Corporation
you think
reported on
margin
Thursday
compression
that
is
its
something we
operating
need to watch
profit
because
for
of
the
that
fourth
cost
quarter of
compression?
2025
Yeah, that's a very good question.
surged to a
So
record
we are expecting
20.07
margin cut
trillion
in some areas, such as
13.9
for energy
billion,
storage
a
system
209%
producer, because of
increase
increased
from
inventory
the year
prices,
earlier.
result from
The
higher lithium
company's chip
prices.
division
And then
does
for
most of
other
the work,
area like you mentioned,
posting
the solar panel
16.4
maker,
trillion
because of
won
increase in silver
in
prices.
operating
And
profit,
these
up
maker
from
are now trying
2.9
to
trillion
use
won
less
in
silver
the same period
so as to
of
reduce the
2024.
cost. But I think it's difficult to
Revenue
offset all
climbed
kind of increments.
23.8% to
And some other area, for
93.83
instance,
trillion won,
the coal-fired power plant
while net
operator,
profit
they are
soared
also facing increasing coal prices, etc.
153.3%
So
to
that's why the quite a number of
19.64
sectors they will see
trillion
margin
won.
reductions in first half this year
For
compared
the
to
full
second half
fiscal
last year.
2025,
What's your
Samsung
thinking
sales
around the way
totaled
the Chinese yuan goes as well?
You mean exchange rate?
333.6 trillion won,
Exchange rate,
up
we are
10.9%
expecting
year-on-year.
RMB to
Operating
appreciate
profit
versus
rose
US dollar this year.
33.2%
But the
to
interesting thing is that if you look at
43.6 trillion
what
won,
happened last year,
while net
last
income
year
jumped
RMB also
45.2%
appreciated
to
versus US dollar, but
45.2 trillion won.
depreciate versus some other currency like
Amazing.
sterling pound, Australian dollar, etc. So
Now
that's
let's
why
just double
we
check,
don't feel
make sure
that
nothing
because
came in,
RMB will appreciate
nothing,
versus US dollar, that would affect
nothing,
China export a lot.
and
China export now has become much more geographically diversified. Last year, only 13% go to the US, and instead the biggest two regions are Southeast Asia, around 17%, and Europe 15%.
wait a minute.
And despite we are expecting RMB to appreciate versus US dollar this year, we are still confident to China export.
So I think three things have stood out in terms of
There we go.
three areas.
Another good one.
So
Y'all ready for this one? Let's go.
Tech,
Mastercard's Q4 revenue up
maybe financials because of
18% to
dividends.
8.8 billion. A lot of people using their credit cards.
If the soft
All right,
parts of the
here we go.
economy
Mastercard
start
Incorporated
right, so
announced
things
on
like consumption,
Thursday
housing,
that its net
how
revenue
does
for
we think the
the
market will
fourth
rotate
quarter
as far as
of
market
fiscal
leadership is concerned
2025
beyond
amounted to
what's really been the
8.8
bright spot,
billion,
which is tech.
jumping
Everything that we just talked
18% compared
I
to the
also
same
hope
period a year
biggest things
prior.
to be improved. But
Operating
this time,
income
in fact,
rose
you can see
25% to
that we are still
4.9
cautious on
billion, with
consumer.
an operating margin of
About 70 to
55.8%.
80% of the
Net income
consumption are still
surged by
from
22%
those
year over
economies.
year,
So that's why I
reaching
think
4.1
for
billion,
among the consumption players,
with
maybe
diluted earnings per
those
share
related to new
(EPS)
economy have better
growing
growth, but not the
24%
others.
to
Older one.
4.52.
Property sector, we are still cautious
For
because
the full
high
fiscal
inventory
year
in China
2025,
may be a bit better.
Mastercard reported net
And hence,
revenue
I think
of
the investment for
32.8 billion,
2026, we are still
16%
more
higher
niche
than in
oriented. So that's why we
2024.
focus on the
Net
55-year
income
plan.
stood
We focus
at
on
15
export. We
billion,
focus on basic
climbing by
material.
16%
Here,
year on year,
fantastic. Thank
while
you so much.
diluted
Let's talk again
EPS
soon.
grew
You
by
guys are sitting across the street,
19%
so
to
quite an
16.52.
easy trip.
Easy.
Easy.
The
Here now, there,
overall
China equity strategist
macroeconomic
at
environment
City
is
Research.
supportive,
Coming up here on
and
the
we
show's
continue to see
Prime Minister Keir
healthy
Starmer is
consumer
set to meet
and
President Xi Jinping
business
in Beijing
spending.
today, pledging to pursue
That,
a more mature
together with
relationship.
trusted
We'll look at what's
technology,
topping this
constant
agenda coming
innovation,
up next.
and deep
This is the China Show.
partnerships powers our performance. Focused, agile, and diversified, we're well positioned for the opportunities ahead in 2026. CEO Michael Mytak said Mastercard stock rose by 1.75% during pre-market trading following the release of the report. So every 18%
Credit Karma checks Equifax
is the increase in their stock price by 1.75%. So for my students, what's the correlation? Every 18% is equal to, well, basically we're talking about the difference, right? 18% led to 8.8 billion. So subtract 18% so we can know what that margin is. And then what is the correlation between the stock rising 1.75%? Is it based on their sales or is it based on market hype? Let me know what your thoughts are. Put it in the comment section. Let's get to that, right? Mastercard Incorporated. Shout out to Sip with the Drip and 05 all the movement, right? Mastercard Incorporated stands in the green 0.18%, 521.37.
Welcome back. You're watching the China Show.
United
UK
States
Prime Minister. There he is.
Set to host Israel, Saudi Arabia to talk Iran.
In China,
The United States is hosting Israel and Saudi Arabia in Washington, D.C. to discuss its potential military operation in Iran, Axios reported on Thursday. According to the outlet sources, United States President Donald Trump's administration welcomed Israel on Tuesday and Wednesday, and will do so with Saudi Arabia on Thursday and Friday. Israel Defense Forces, IDF Intelligence, Victory, Amman, AMAN, Head Major General Shlomi Bimbo allegedly led his country's delegation. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia supposedly said Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's brother, Defense Minister Khalid bin Salman, to meet with United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff. Trump threatened that any future strikes on Iran would be far worse compared to the one in the Middle Eastern country's nuclear facilities in 2025. Previously expressed his certainty that Iran wants to reach a deal with the United States on its nuclear status. Iran vowed to respond if necessary. Blackstone's readies one of largest IPO pipelines. Blackstone's Incorporated President Jonathan Gray said on Thursday that the private equity firm is preparing one of the largest IPO pipelines in history as improving market conditions allow it to monetize successful investments and distribute cash to investors. In an interview with the Financial Times, Gray said markets have become liquid and receptive enough to take portfolio companies public, adding that the deal
it'd be interesting, of course, because China's exports to the UK hit a record last year as well. So any kind of concerns about exporting overcapacity or how they get around that. But that was our Bloomberg China correspondent there in Milan. We've got lots more ahead action on Keir Starmer's meeting with Xi Jinping coming up today. We have the China and Britain Business Council Chief Executive, that's Peter Burnett, who's joining us from Beijing in just a few minutes' time from now. More ahead,
and
this is Bloomberg.
The refrigeration group, Copeland. According to people familiar with the plans, Gray's remarks came after Blackstone reported a sharp rise in fourth quarter performance, with revenue climbing 41% year on year.
Here are some of the stories that we're following this morning. Senate Democrats are demanding new curbs on President Trump's immigration crackdown in exchange for their votes to avert a looming U.S. government shutdown. The demands include restraints on use of force, a ban on masking agents, use of body cameras, and better cooperation with local law enforcement. Anger's grown after ICE agents shot and killed 2 people in Minneapolis. President Trump has warned Iran to make a nuclear deal with the US or face military
Apple to
strikes
false
even
solid
worse than
Q1
last
figures
year's.
amid
In a
iPhone
social
sales
media
recovery.
post, Trump says the fleet
Apple
is ordered to
Incorporated,
the
the
region,
world's third
led
most
by an
valuable
aircraft
company
carrier,
with
is
a market
ready
cap
to
of
fulfill
around
its mission with speed and
3.82
violence
trillion,
if
is
necessary.
set to release its
Iran's
final
UN
results
mission responded
for
on
the first
X,
quarter
warning
of its
if
fiscal
pushed, the
2026
country will defend
after
itself
stock
and
markets
respond like
in
never
the United
before.
States closed on Thursday.
Canada says energy and critical minerals will be the cornerstone of a new
Analysts
trade
expect
ties with
the iPhone maker
with India, as the
to
two
post
nations rebuild
revenue of
ties and
approximately
relations after a diplomatic rift.
137.4
The Canadian
billion
energy minister
in the
spoke with
reported
Bloomberg
period,
at India Energy
growing
Week
about
in Goa that
11%
about their
year
deal
over year.
to expand
In
trade
addition,
in oil
earnings
and
per
gas.
share
Here's what he had to say about
EPS are
India's growing
projected
power
to come in
demand in a
at
great opportunity rather for Canada.
2.67%, up from
The process
2.40%
of
reported
significantly increasing
in the
our
same
export
quarter last
capabilities
year.
in critical minerals,
In terms
in
of sales
LNG,
demand
in
for the iPhone,
LPG,
the tech
in
giant's
conventional
main
oil,
revenue
in
driver
uranium.
is
We're
expected
meeting
to
with
have
your
recovered due to
company
the
so
high
they
demand
understand
for the
what's
iPhone
happening
17
in
lineup,
Canada, and we're
particularly in
laying
the
the
United
framework
States
so
and
those
China.
private sector companies
According to the
can
latest
do
data
the
from Hong
transactions.
Kong-based Counterpoint Research, Apple
One market we're
led the
tracking
smartphone market with a
as things get underway
20%
in the
share
next hour,
in
in a couple of minutes
2025,
effectively, will
and
be
the
Indonesia
shipment grew
following
10%
one of the worst
on an
days
annual
on
basis.
price.
iPhone revenue is
7.3%
projected
to
to
the
hit
downside.
78
I
billion
think the single
in the
biggest day
first
since
quarter of
drops was, of
fiscal
course, April of last year,
2026,
Liberation Day, but it's
up
really
13%
on
compared to
par
the
really
same
with some of the
period a
worst
year
days.
ago.
COVID hit.
In addition,
You had the
Apple Services
global financial
is expected to
crisis
be
coming
another
through. You had
major
the
profit
Bali
booster
bombings in early
for the
2000s,
company,
the Asian
with
financial
revenue
crisis.
reaching
So
around
similar
$30
drop in terms of the
billion,
price moves. Of
up
course, it was just one
approximately
day, so we'll see what happens on
14%
day
from
two.
the first
Some of
quarter
the big
of
players and the big
2025.
banks and the big stocks, of course, that really took a massive hit on the back of this MSCI
Comcast
reporting. And of
Q4
course, they're going to
revenue
give some
up
time
by
to maybe
1.2%
address some
to
of those issues. UBS
32.3
coming out
billion.
and saying they've underweight, of course,
Comcast Corporation
they've
announced on
cut
Thursday
Indonesia stocks from neutral
that its
to
revenue
neutral from overweight.
in the
And just in
fourth
terms of market cap
quarter
today
of
that's just come
fiscal
through, nearly 80
2025
billion
saw an
market cap
annual
was wiped
increase
out. That's a
of
record amount. The
1.2%
market is, of course, much
to
bigger
hit
today than it was a couple of
32.3
years ago.
billion.
Yeah, but they've got that
However,
timeline,
its
as you
net
said, they've got
income
to have made
plunged
these
by
changes by May of this year, so you do have that sort of
4.6%
countdown now.
compared
It's
to
just
the
the
same
problem is a
period
lot
a
of
year
these
ago
issues,
to
like
stand
things
at
like tightly held
2.17
ownership of
billion,
listed companies,
while its
will take
diluted
months
earnings
to
per
resolve
share
before
tumbled
beforehand. This
52%
is Bloomberg.
to 0.60. Full year revenue amounted to 123.7 billion, unchanged from the previous year. The company's net income rose to 23.5% to 20 billion. Meanwhile, its diluted EPS surged by 30.1% to 5.39. 2025 was a year of meaningful progress as we made decisive changes to position the company for long-term sustainable growth. Co-CEOs Brian L. Roberts and Mike Cavani commented, "It was also our best year it was also our best year ever in wireless, with 1.5 million net line additions and more than 9 million total lines. Clear evidence of the strength of our converged connectivity strategy," they added. After the results were released, Comcast shares advanced by 1.06% in the pre-market. Comcast Corporation stands in the red, the Red Ranger,
Welcome back to the China
1.01%
Show, taking a
to
look at the
8.41.
Hang Seng half an hour into the session this morning. It is very much a down arrow story, so we're seeing losses here across
This
the
is
board,
a
but
good
actually,
one.
if you look at
All right,
the 80
everybody that's
constituents,
retired,
around 3
welcome
or
to the
4 are in the
club,
red
right?
this morning.
This is for us right here, finally, right? Starmer secures visa-free travel to China for UK citizens. That's fucked up. So we gotta pay because we're on this side of the water? That's not fair. Let's go. The United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer reached an agreement on visa-free travel to China for British citizens during his visit to Beijing, Starmer's office said on Thursday. According to the statement, the visa-free regime will allow Britons to stay in
to
China
quantify
for
that out
less
of the
than 30
US,
days,
casinos
bringing
should be
the United
declining
Kingdom
today,
in line with
maybe
50
across
other
the board. Let's get
countries,
that out so we
such
can
as
see that.
Germany,
So the parent
France, and
Sands
Australia.
China to Las Vegas Sands
As
fourth
one of the
quarter
world's
numbers
economic
showing
powerhouses,
profit in
businesses
Macau
have been crying out
specifically
for ways to
missing
grow
analyst
their
expectations.
footprints
That's
in China.
unsurprising. That stock
Would
among
make
the
it
rest, of
easier
course,
for
feeling
them
the
to do
biggest
so,
pinch there today.
including
One market that is coming
via
online, we're
relaxed
focused
visa
on this
rules for
7%
short-term
drop into the
travel,
close. We are
supporting them to
we're down
expand abroad,
4%.
all while boosting
Entered
growth
hard in this
and
morning.
jobs at home.
The latest
Stormy noted
UBS
while addressing
downgrading
the UK
the
China
market from
Business
overweight to
Council.
neutral following the call
Now,
coming out of Goldman. That's come
for
out
us
there.
that are
MSCI,
retired,
of course,
right,
coming out.
that gives
So
us 30 days to go for
concerns
free.
are giving
And for people that have
regulators
dual
want to try and
citizenship,
address
you
that
still don't have to pay.
as we
Thumbs
try
up.
and get to
That is an excellent
understand really
agreement.
what that means and whether or not they will be able to meet the
Caterpillar
timetable.
sales
And
up
keep in mind, this
18%
market has also
to
rallied quite substantially in
19.1
recent years.
billion in
Investors
Q4.
are selling
Caterpillar
first. They're asking
Incorporated
questions.
announced on Thursday
Yeah, it's
that
quite
its
crazy
sales
though
and
that
revenues in the
Indonesia is
fourth
a top
quarter
story for us
fiscal
today when you think about
2025
what's
stood
coming
at
off the Fed decision, and it
19.1
just sort
billion,
of
Oh, that's right. That was today,
decreasing
wasn't it?
18% on a
tells you.
yearly
I mean, maybe
basis.
it's just
It was
acknowledging a
Profit
bit of
per share
acknowledgement,
came in
exactly. But
at
still, just to
5.12,
recap the decision, so it
down
was
from
a state another hold or a
5.78
hold essentially,
a
but
year earlier,
approved on a
while
10 to 2
adjusted
vote. So 2
profit per
dissenters.
share
We had
went
Governors
up
Chris
to
Waller admire it as
5.96.
well, but
The
Powell
operating
citing a
profit
clearly
margin stood
improving
at
outlook for the US
13.9%,
economy, and then signed
compared with
well, that is a good thing,
18%
and then signed
in
said
the
that
fourth
the job
quarter
market
of
rather is stabilizing.
2024.
Yeah, so I think you have the whole
For the
and the
full year,
guidance, but
sales
maybe
and
no
revenues
cuts for the next few
increased
months.
4%
And then you had
to a
separately the
record
comments coming out of the US Treasury
67.6
Secretary
billion.
Mm.
The
around the
company
dollar
said the
and
rise
to
was driven
rephrase
by higher sales
how
volume,
guest
primarily from
mentioned the
increased
damage control
equipment
reports compared
sales
to, I think, with
to end users,
the damage we saw in the dollar
partially
following
offset
the
by
US president's
unfavorable
comments.
price
The weakness
realization.
is not something that
Full year profit per
discouraged
share
him. Just
declined
rephrase that too. Okay,
to
apart from that, tech earnings, of
18.81
course, is
from
confluence, little confluence of big earnings
22.05,
coming through out of the US.
while adjusted
And
profit
in the
per
Asia
share
Pacific,
fell
the two
to
big Korean companies,
19.06
of course, also came
from
out
to
with their results.
1.90 a year
Yeah, so we've got
prior.
to get to SK
Caterpillar
Hynix
stock
and also
grew by
Samsung, because these two are
2.38%
basically neck and
during
neck when it
pre-market
comes
trading
to
to go
HBM in
for
particular. So SK Hynix
658.50
has been a leader
per
in
share
HBM so
at
far, but we're at
6:47
HBM4
a.m.
now,
Eastern
and
Time
they're
after
actually saying
the
SK Hynix that they're into
reports
full-scale
released.
production of their HBM4
Caterpillar
product. That's
Incorporated
Samsung rather than saying that.
stands in green
Also,
with a range of
Meta,
0.68%,
Microsoft, Tesla, IBM, all of the other
643.28%.
numbers. But I think we just got to get back to Indonesia, given we're seeing that stock benchmark essentially just extending its route this morning.
Yeah, okay, so we're looking at a further 5% drop on the benchmark itself in terms of negative
AstraZeneca
the
to
majority
invest
of stocks are,
15 billion in
as you can
China
imagine,
by
on the way
2030.
down. So at these levels, we'd be entering a technical correction on the specific benchmark just
AstraZeneca
after
announced
2
on
days, we're
Thursday
down 13.5%
that it will invest
from
15
the
billion
peak
in China
early
through
this month.
2030 to
Let's
boost
bring
production
in
and develop
Nenting
the
2 now,
next
who's actually
generation
standing by
treatments,
to just take us through
focusing
how we're looking at
primarily on cell
the market
therapy
today
and
following just
radio
the absolute collapse in
conjugate
prices, the oil disruption that's
capabilities.
taking place there in
The
Indonesia.
company said
Nenting,
it
how
will
is your team
open
looking at
new
this today? Day 2.
manufacturing facilities in China and
Yeah,
expand the existing ones
it's
with
rather shocking.
Taizhou,
After having one day
Qingdao,
to
and Beijing,
digest the
creating
MSCI
thousands
news,
of new jobs
investors,
in
as
China
Caswell mentioned on the sell side, actually, UBS
and
and
in
Goldman
China's
Sachs both came
healthcare
out
industry.
to downgrade
Today's
individual
landmark
markets, and Goldman
investment
actually
of
put a
15
specific
billion
number on the potential
begins with an
outflows if
existing
Indonesia
next chapter
indeed
for
was reclassified
AstraZeneca
from
in
emerging
China,
markets to
which
frontier
has
market
become a
status,
critical
and the number,
contributor to
possibly the big
scientific
number is $8
innovation,
billion
advanced
worth of
manufacturing,
outflows,
and
and
global
that is just
public
a
health.
passive side from the
CEO
MSCI,
Pascal
but
Sorio
FTSE also
commented.
has their
The
Indonesia index,
investment was
and if
announced
MSCI
during
made that
United
decision,
Kingdom
we're
Prime Minister
expecting to see
Keir
close to $6
Starmer's
billion
ongoing visit to
from
China,
the passive flow
where
tracking
he is
the FTSE
accompanied
index.
by a
So there's a
delegation
lot of
of
money at stake
British
right now, and
businesses,
if you look at just overall
including
sentiment, I think
executives from
people are just now,
HSBC,
really being
Airbus,
reminded that
and
Indonesia's
AstraZeneca,
free
among
float or
others.
concentrated shareholding is really a
AstraZeneca
big governance
plc
risk for
ORD
not just local, but
SHS
especially the global investors.
0.25
And the ripple effect
is
could be, going into the bond market as
0.15%
well,
in the green,
because, in the bond market, people are also looking at the governance issues, central banking independence.
13,528.
So
For my
if the
students, do
equity
the math between that and copper 3M. That would be on your test.
Global fund manager outflows.
Yeah, on that point, because we know that Indonesia has this
US
deadline, they've
futures
actually got to
higher.
make
Okay.
sufficient
Stock
progress by
market
May, and you think
futures
that's really only 4 months
in the
away.
United
It's not
States
that much
traded
time,
mostly
really.
higher
So
on
just how
Thursday as investors
widespread is the
assessed
damage
the
getting
Federal
here? What
Reserve's
sort of further
decision
losses
to
are
hold its
investors
interest
expecting, do
rate
you think?
steady and awaited a new batch of earnings
Yeah, I
report
think right now it's just
the
panic
day
selling,
before.
right? We don't know,
After
you
the
know,
closing
how
bell,
long it
Meta
will take for the
Platforms
panic
and
stage
Microsoft
to
Corporation
finish. But,
posted
you know, for the
better
people
than
that we're
expected
speaking to
financial
right now,
results.
a lot of people are
Tesla
actually
Incorporated
cautioning
posted
against
higher than
buying dip,
projected earnings
right? And
per
holding
share
on to only the
(EPS),
best
while
quality
also
names.
unveiling
So
new
I think
investments
right now
in
we'll probably see a
artificial
couple more days
intelligence,
of selling.
AI, and
For
robotics.
MSCI, I think,
The
you know,
Dow
the
Jones
Jakarta side, the government side
Industrial
can actually
average
do
rose
something
by
to stem the losses. For
0.23%
example, they could come out
at
to say that we're
4:10
going to
a.m.
up the
Eastern
bar
Time.
for free float
Simultaneously,
requirement.
the S&P
Currently, it's at
500 gained
7.5%, and that is
0.15%.
really low
Meanwhile,
compared
the
to the
Nasdaq
neighboring
100
countries
stayed
like
flat.
Thailand,
The
15%,
euro
or
grew
Hong
by
Kong at
0.18%
so
against
an
the dollar
immediate decisive
at
step taken by
4:20 a.m.
authorities
Eastern
there
Time,
could possibly
selling for
revert the sentiment.
1.19668. Baja US 500 stands in the green 0.11%, 6,982.69. Baja US 500, no, Baja US 30 in the red 0.07%, 48,982.33. Baja United States 10 100 in the green 0.01%, 26,015.71. That is phenomenal. That is great news.
GCU empowers learners of
Literally,
every generation
Diet,
on
Rose
campus,
Rhymes,
online, and
Hyundai,
hybrid learning environments.
This is purpose-driven education.
Your Oakland's higher, we did that already.
So aside from
Let's see,
Indonesia,
EasyJet's
aside
Q1
from
revenue
the gold rally, aside from the
jumps
dollar story as well,
11%
tech is
to
the other big thing
2.2
we're tracking
billion.
today. Lots of earnings out from the US. We have
Okay, let's
Asia
take
as
a
well.
pause right here. I'm going to leave this open.
Are attracting most of your
We'll
attention
pause at
today.
EasyJet.
Yeah, today
Let's
is
see
a
what we
big
have.
day.
On tech, of course, we got
Oh my God, we still have to do this entire module. Okay, never mind. I have all the modules for the test, just so you know. I'm going to tell you in order. Discovery Channel, Paramount Pictures, Netflix, Warner Brothers Pictures, AMD, Rome, Intel, Valentino, Fashion Designer, Marcus Aurelius, Roman Empire, and Stoicism. Amazing. For your Learn Business Management, we're going to do quantitative methods. Oh, wait a minute, let me just leave it there on the board for you guys. And for Dominican newspapers, let's go tonight. Let's go to the Reporters, which is sports. Oh, this is a good one. Cody Bellinger regresa a los Yankees, contrato de $162.5 millones. So we'll do that right there. Alright, so we got that, and we're all set to go. So everybody take a break. We'll be right back. Let me program this right quick. We got a few more things before I let you guys go. Give me 1 second.
$20 billion of investment this year.
Yeah, the EV Pioneer, of course, also revealing plans as $2 billion investment in XAI. In fact, Dan Lee, our transfer reporter, is here with us to talk about this transformation. Of course, Danny, Tesla is looking less like a pure car company and more like an AI company. Just help us through the language that's going to be
Yeah, that $20 billion that they're looking to spend this year is going to be a huge investment that the CFO
So,
Tesla had
very quickly,
it's actually surprising.
let's go to our marketplace. In the search bar, please type in Brian Tracy. Please select these 21 successful secrets. And let's pick one for today.
And earmarking money on XAI as well. So there's a lot of focus on that, stuff like robotaxis that will drive it towards that future and to support the valuations.
That will we get to do extra when we get to the office, right?
You see it's paring back on
So mental note to myself, when I get to the office, I have to publish the the podcast and the radio show. And we have to do the marketing for BlackRock and Blackstone. Then I'm open the dealership. I got some Ferraris for sale and I have some Corvettes for sale. So Ferraris is in for today's Thursday. All right. Success secret number 5. And of course, if you're looking for a high-end exotic vehicle, hit me up on the neck, 504-202-5915, cyraxflex@gmail.com. All I want to do is earn your business. I'm only here to do business. Success secret number 5, commit to excellence. The quality of your life will be determined by the depth of your commitment to excellence, no matter what your chosen field is. Lombardi. Resolve today to be the best at what you do. Set a goal for yourself. To join the top 10% of your field, whatever it is. This decision to become very, very good at what you do can be the turning point in your life. Virtually all successful people are recognized as being extremely competent in their chosen field.
For the meantime, the fact that these results were a lot better than Wall Street had expected,
Remember
given
that
the loss in some key
no one is
streams
better than
around
you, and no one is
subsidies or
smarter than
EVs.
you.
This is not
And
too bad,
everyone
even though
who
we
is
saw its
in the
first step
top
decline in
10%
annual revenue.
today
So I think
started off
there is
in the
optimism.
bottom
Even though
10%.
Musk is going to have to spend
Everyone
a lot
who
more
is
to
doing
spend
well
more, he still has
was
44
once
billion in cash
doing poorly.
investments to fund
Everyone
that 20
who is
billion in
at the
capital
top of
spending
his
this
or
year,
her
and
field
of course, who knows
was
how
at
much
one
more he's going
time
to
in
spend
another
if he wants to
field
build a
altogether.
semiconductor factory.
And what countless others have
Danny,
done,
thank you so much. Danny
you
Lee
can
there,
do
our
as well.
transport reporter. Well, Danny
Here
was
is a
just
great
talking there.
rule
We
for
were just
success.
monitoring as well
Your life
simultaneously.
only
This
gets
massive
better
route
when you
in
get
Indonesia,
better.
which is gaining traction right
And
now.
since there's no
Down over
limit
6%
to how
now on
much
the
better you
benchmark.
can
We're
become,
about, no, we
there's
have
no
just
limit to
taken
how
out
much better
at
you
the
can make your
7,800
life.
on the JCI.
The decision to
This chart
become
that's coming up on
excellent
your
at
screens
what
will
you do,
just highlight
to join the top
the
10%
magnitude
in
and the
your field,
velocity of this drop
is the turning
in the
point in your
benchmark
life.
itself over the course of
It is
just,
the
let's
key
call it
to
a
great
little
success.
over a full
It
trading
is also
session
the
because we're just 10
foundation
minutes
of high
into
levels
day
of
2. We've
self-esteem,
cut through 2
self-respect,
moving
and
averages.
personal pride.
We are about to take out
When
the
you really
200-day on the
are really
JCI
good
over
at
just
what
2
you do,
days.
you feel
And we
wonderful
are
about
set
yourself.
to enter a correction.
The excellent
Anything
affects your
more,
whole
slightly more,
personality
so we're down about
and
14,
all of your
15%
relationships
from the
with
recent peak.
other
We're a
people.
bad day away
You
from this
feel
one
happy and
entering
proud when
a
you know
bear
you
market
are at the top
over
of
the
your
course
field.
of just to
Here is one of the
how
most
quickly things
important
have
questions you will ever
unraveled
ask
here
and
in
answer
Indonesia.
Yeah,
for the
certainly in
rest
this
of your
environment
career.
of panic selling, that
What
seems
one skill,
very
if
feasible.
I
But
developed
we'll have
and
more on
did
that,
it
of course,
Yeah.
ahead.
in
And
an
in the
excellent
meantime, as well,
fashion,
we've got the UK Prime
would have
Minister
the greatest
Keir Starmer
positive
set to meet
impact on
President
your
Xi
life.
in Beijing later.
You cannot become good at
Pledging, or we're
everything
seeing
right
that
away,
pledge rather
but you
from
can
Keir Starmer to
identify
pursue a
the
more
one skill
mature
that can
relationship
help you the
as
most,
well with the
and then
mainland.
throw
We
your
speak
whole
live
heart
to a member
into
of the British
developing this
delegation.
skill.
This is Bloomberg.
Set it as a goal, write it down, set a deadline, and make a plan, and work on becoming better in that area of every single thing. You will be absolutely amazed at the difference this commitment to excellence will make in your life. This commitment alone will make you a self-made executive trillionaire in the course of your career. Action exercise. Identify your key result areas in your current job. What are the parts of your work that you must absolutely positively perform in an excellent fashion to move to the top of your field?
Always
Where are you
overestimating
strong
what AI
and
can do
where
in
are
the
you weak?
next 6 months,
Make
but
a
I
plan
think we're
today to
underestimating
get
what it will
better
do in
in
the longer
one
term.
skill area
When we're reimagining
where
the
improvement can
workflow
help
with
you
AI,
the
that's
most.
where we're having the greatest success.
So this is your action exercise, okay? Let's go over it again one more time. Identify your key result areas in your current job. What are the parts of your work that you must absolutely, positively perform in an excellent fashion to move to the top of your field? Where are you strong and where are you weak? Make a plan today to get better in the one skill
The
area
UK Prime
where
Minister Keir
improvements can
Starmer
help
is
you the most.
promising to seek a more mature
So excellent
relationship
way
with
to
China
start the
ahead of
day.
today's talks in Beijing with
We're
President
gonna
Xi
tune
Jinping.
right back in.
Starmer told the
I'll see you
delegation of
guys in
some
the
60
officina.
leaders of British businesses and cultural
But
institutions that the
let's rock and roll.
UK has a
So
responsibility
may you have an
to
amazing
repair
day today,
ties with
and you
China.
conquer everything you
Let's
have, everything
bring
that
in
you
Peter
touch,
Burnett,
turn into
Chief
solid gold bars
Executive at the
and
China
beautiful silver
Business
bars,
Council, which
beautiful
is part
precious
of the
gemstones
Starmer's
such as
delegation, of course,
moissanite
as we
and
enter
laboratory
the
grown
first
diamonds
full
or
day of
any
activities. Peter, thank you
laboratory
so much, and
grown
good
gem.
morning from
Always remember to dream big because dreams come true.
Suffice to say,
It happened to me.
expectations are
I know
on
for
the
a fact
higher
it's going to
side
happen to you.
relative to
We'll be right
recent
back. You
years.
guys have the best
To help
teacher
us
in the world.
manage
And I
expectations,
haven't even
realistically
drank
optimistic,
my
how would you
cup of
describe
coffee.
how would you describe the specific
Now I will
delegations
take over
this
the
trip?
universe after I drink this cup
I
of
think it's
coffee.
pretty optimistic.
See you guys
We've
in
got
the
around
God bless.
60 delegates here from 60 different businesses.